You are listening to One Nation Under Crime, a historical, chronological true crime podcast. Each week, we go through our nation's history and discuss cases from each year starting in 1800. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Leah.
I will say this about this week's episode.
Uh-oh.
One, this is the name. This is the name episode. I'm not going to tell you what it is right now.
Yes,
but
this is the one that you said I'm going to enjoy.
Yeah. We also are covering a very interesting person for our person this week as well. So I'm pretty excited about that just because I didn't know a lot about this person.
And now you have newfound respect?
I wouldn't say that.
Oh.
It was just interesting.
Okay.
So we'll see. Our sources for this week, we have the Oregon Encyclopedia. The Tillamook Headlight Herald.
Well.
And the Oregon State Bar, because I'm fancy like that. Our births in 1852, February 18th, we have Ferdinand Lee Barnett. He was a journalist, lawyer, and civil rights activist who was the third Black person to be admitted to practice law in Illinois.
That's awesome.
He was an Aquarius.
But you know, when I hear the name Ferdinand, you know what I think of?
Ferdinand the Bull?
The Bull.
February 26th, John Harvey Kellogg, medical doctor, nutritionist, health activist, and businessman. He was a director of the Battle Creek Sanitarium, which was founded by members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It combined aspects of a spa, hospital, and high-class hotel that catered to the rich and famous of the time. But Kellogg was also known to offer his services for free to those who could not afford health care.
Well, that's kind of him.
He's a Pisces. March 25th, Charles Loomis Dana. He's a physician and professor of nervous and mental disease at Cornell Medical College. A fun fact about him, he opposed the 18th Amendment that prohibited alcohol and recommended personal moderation in alcohol consumption.
Well, I mean...
And he was a doctor.
If people were able to do that well...
Like a professor and everything, yeah.
You know, I'm just saying.
So he's an Aries. April 13th, we have Frank Winfield Woolworth, entrepreneur and founder of F.W. Woolworth Company and operator of what we know as Five and Dime stores.
Yep.
He pioneered, which I did not know this, and this was very interesting. He pioneered the practice of buying merchandise directly from manufacturers and making the prices in store fixed rather than haggling. He also was the first to use self-service display cases so that customers could examine what they wanted to buy without the need of sales clerks.
Oh.
Introverts everywhere, thank you. Let me tell you one thing. If anyone knows anything about me, it is the fact I hate being asked if I need help in stores. One, no, I will come to you. You don't come to me. We've discussed, I'm a cat. We've already discussed this. I am very much a cat. I don't like, and if I might knock those pens off the counter if pressed.
I mean, you get somebody's attention.
Just got to get that cat motive in me. But I don't, no. I will not, if I've been somewhere where I've been to like a store or something where the store, like there's just the people were a little bit too pushy or something for me. I will not go. Like I will not.
Oh yeah.
Go back.
And I am not.
I just don't want to, I don't like it.
I have introvertish tendencies at times, but I'm not an introvert.
Right.
But, you know, ask me one time and I say, I'm just looking. That's fine. But let's let that be the end of it.
Yeah. And like, if I'm genuine, like if you can tell I actually need help.
Like if you see me with a puzzled look and I look like I'm, you know, looking here. Yeah.
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 If I'm standing in the buggy to get something off the top shelf and you can help me, like, then yes. Otherwise, no. I can stand on the bottom shelf and reach the top one just fine. Thank you. Yeah. So he was an Aries. And May 18th, this is a name, Gertrude Casespire. She was a photographer known for her portraits of Native Americans and her promotion of photography as a career for women. She was a Taurus.
I wonder if they called her Gert.
They called her Gertie. You know they did.
Or maybe just Gert. Who knows?
Our deaths in 1852. February 24th, we have John Frazee. He was the first American sculptor to sculpt a bust in marble.
Ooh.
March 9th, Anson Dickinson. He was a painter of miniature portraits. May 15th, Louisa Adams. She was First Lady of the United States and wife of John Quincy Adams. August 14th, Margaret Taylor. She was a First Lady of the United States as well and the wife of Zachary Taylor. We have September 20th, Philander. That is the first name. Philander Chase.
Wow.
He was an Episcopal Church bishop, educator, pioneer, and founder of Kenyon College. October 13th, John Lloyd Stevens. He was a traveler, diplomat, and a Mayan archaeologist.
Wow.
Which I found
cool.
very interesting. And then November 30th, Junius Brutus Booth, actor and father of John Wilkes Booth. And
Edwin Booth. That's his brother.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Our person of interest for 1852. I'm hoping in the beginning you don't know this name.
Okay.
I'm hoping.
If I do I need to be quiet?
Yes.
Okay. It's hard.
Don't ruin it. Our person of interest in 1852 is Martha Jane Canary. Does that name sound familiar?
No, I don't think
No?
so.
Okay. A lot of her early life we know because of a booklet that she wrote in 1896 for publicity purposes. However, many have said that the information is exaggerated or even totally inaccurate. So take it with a grain of salt. Martha Jane Canary was born on May 1st of 1852, making her a Taurus, in Princeton, Missouri, to Robert Wilson Canary, who was known to have a gambling problem, and her mother, Charlotte Canary. Martha was the oldest of 6 children. She had 2 brothers and 3 sisters. In 1856, Robert and his family joined a wagon train from Missouri to Virginia City, Montana. I was like, oh, whoa. Yeah. Missouri to Virginia City, Montana.
I remember.
The next year, her mother, Charlotte, died of pneumonia on the trip to Blackfoot, Montana. They didn't stay in Montana long, and her father, Robert, took her and her siblings to move to Salt Lake City, Utah. They lived on a 40-acre farm, and the year after they arrived, her father, Robert, then died when Martha was only 14 years old.
Oh.
And the oldest of 6 kids.
Oh. And she's the oldest at 14.
Mm-hmm. She took charge of her 5 siblings, loaded up her wagon again, and moved to Piedmont in the Wyoming Territory. When they arrived, Martha took whatever job she could to provide for her siblings. She was a waitress, a cook, a dishwasher, a dance hall girl, an ox team driver, and even a nurse.
I mean, she's got lots of skills.
Mm-hmm. In 1874, she finally found work as a scout at Fort Russell, and it was at this time that she also dabbled on and off in sex work at Fort Laramie. And it was called the 3 Mile Hog Ranch. Yep. Before eventually moving out to the Great Plains. She was involved in conflicts with Native Americans, and in her booklet, she wrote, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Quote, "It was during this campaign that I was christened Calamity Jane." It was on Goose Creek, Wyoming, where the town of Sheridan is now located. Captain Egan was in command of the post. We were ordered out to quell an uprising of the Indians and were out for several days. Had numerous skirmishes during which 6 of the soldiers were killed and several severely wounded. When on returning to the post, we were ambushed about 1.5 miles from our destination. When fired upon, Captain Egan was shot. I was riding in advance and on hearing the firing, turned in my saddle and saw the captain reeling in his saddle as though about to fall. I turned my horse and galloped back with all haste to his side and got there in time to catch him as he was falling. I lifted him onto my horse in front of me and succeeded in getting him to safety to the fort. Captain Egan, on recovering, laughingly said, "I name you Calamity Jane, the heroine of the plains." I have borne that name up to the present time. So yes, this is the story of Calamity Jane.
Very interesting. I saw a picture of her. I saw a bunch of old photographs.
Yeah, we're not done, and she's interesting.
Okay, I was going to say she didn't look like a beautiful woman.
We'll get there. Captain Jack Crawford served under Generals Wesley Merritt and George Crook. Anyways. According to the Montana Anaconda Standard of... Can't.
Okay.
So according to this... okay, that's what it was. Yeah, Captain Jack Crawford said this about Calamity Jane. Remember, I said she wrote all of this, and so take it all with a grain of salt. So he said, quote, "Calamity Jane never saw any service in any capacity under either General Crook or General Miles. She never saw a lynching and never was in an Indian fight. She was simply a notorious character, dissolute and devilish, but possessed a generous streak which made her popular." A popular belief is that she instead acquired it as a result of her warnings to men that offend her was to court calamity. It's possible that Jane was not a part of her name until the nickname was coined for her. It is certain, however, that she was known by that nickname by 1876 because the arrival of the Hitchcock wagon train was reported in Deadwood's newspaper, the Black Hills Pioneer, on July 15th, 1876, with the headline, "Calamity Jane has arrived." In 1876, Calamity Jane settled in the area of Deadwood, South Dakota in the Black Hills. There, she became friends with Dora Dufran, and she was the Black Hills' leading madam. And so Calamity Jane was occasionally employed by her.
Oh.
On September 6th of 1941, the U.S. Department of Public Welfare granted old age assistance, you ready? To a Jean Hitchcock Burkhart McCormick, who claimed to be the legal offspring of Martha Jane Calamity and James Butler Hitchcock.
Oh, my.
She presented evidence that Calamity Jane, that's Wild Bill Hitchcock.
Yes. Like his show.
Yes. She presented evidence that Calamity Jane and Wild Bill had married at Benson's Landing in Montana Territory, which is now Livingston, Montana, on September 25th of 1873. The documentation was written in a Bible and presumably signed by 2 ministers and numerous witnesses. However, McCormick's claim has been vigorously challenged because of the variety of discrepancies. Calamity Jane does not seem to have had 2 daughters, although she did have 2 daughters, although the father's identity was always unknown.
Oh.
In the late 1880s, Jane returned to Deadwood with a child who she said was her daughter. At Jane's request, a benefit was held in one of the theaters to raise money for her daughter's education in St. Martin's Academy at Sturgis, South Dakota, which was a nearby Catholic boarding school. The benefit raised a large sum of money, but Jane got drunk and spent a considerable portion of the money that same night and left with the child the next day.
Thanks, Mom.
Jane also claimed that following Hitchcock's death, she went after his murderer, Jack McCall, with a meat cleaver since she had left her guns at her residence. Following McCall's execution for the crime, Jane continued living in the Deadwood area for some time, and at one point, she helped save numerous passengers in an overland stagecoach by diverting several Plains Indians who were in pursuit of the vehicle. Stagecoach driver John Slaughter was killed during the pursuit, and Jane took over the reins and drove the stage to its destination at Deadwood. In late 1876 or 1878, Jane nursed the victims of a smallpox epidemic in the Deadwood area. In 1881, Jane bought a ranch west of Miles City, Montana, along the Yellowstone River, where she kept an inn. According to one version of her life, she later married Clinton Burke from Texas and moved to Boulder, where she once again made an attempt in the inn business. In 1893, Calamity Jane started to appear in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show as a storyteller. She also participated in the 1901 Pan American Exposition. Jane returned to the Black Hills in the spring of 1903, where brothel owner Madame Dora Dufran was still running her business. For the next few months, Jane earned her keep by cooking and doing the laundry for Dora's girls. In late July, Jane traveled by ore train to Terry, South Dakota, a small mining village near Deadwood, and it was reported that she had been drinking heavily while on board and had fallen ill. The conductor carried her off the train, a bartender secured a room for her at the Callaway Hotel, and a physician was summoned. Jane's condition deteriorated quickly, and she died at the hotel on Saturday, August 1st of 1903. From inflammation of the bowels and pneumonia.
Ooh, that does not sound pleasant.
Yeah. Calamity Jane was buried at Mount Moriah Cemetery, South Dakota, next to Bill Hitchcock. Another account states, quote, "In compliance with Jane's dying request, the Society of Black Hills Pioneers took charge of her funeral and burial in Mount Moriah Cemetery beside Wild Bill. Not just old friends, but the morbidly curious and many who would not have acknowledged Calamity Jane when she was alive overflowed the First Methodist Church for funeral services on August 4th and followed the hearse up the steep winding hill to Deadwood's Boot Hill." So there's also another story that Bill's friends had her buried there as a joke to Bill.
Oh, no.
So that's the story of Calamity Jane. She was very interesting. It was one of those that I didn't know.
I didn't realize that was her.
Of that.
Yeah, but I saw a picture of her, and it was while she was part of the show. So it was not in her early years.
Yeah.
Not the most eye-catching. Now, Annie Oakley was in the same set, and Annie Oakley was pretty.
Mm-hmm. But she's interesting. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that she said that's how she got her nickname, and then this guy came out and was like, no.
None of this ever happened. Fake news.
No. Yeah. So, on to our case for this week.
Okay.
May 13th of 1852. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Nimrod O'Kelly.
Yes. Nimrod.
I told you.
It's a biblical name.
I told you. But wait. Shot and killed Jeremiah Mahoney near Willamette. Nope, it's not Willamette. I keep thinking it's Willamette. Yep. Willamette Valley.
Are they Irish? Of Irish descent?
This case became the first official recorded homicide case to go before the Oregon Supreme Court.
Ooh.
And your name is Nimrod.
I mean,
so
I don't think Nimrod was used in the same way it's used now back then.
This might be the source of the name. Who knows? The Willamette Valley is a 150-mile long valley nestled in the Pacific Northwest region of the United States in Oregon. The river flows the entire length of the valley and is surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, which are the Cascade Range to the east, the Oregon Coast Range to the west, and the Calapooya Mountains to the south.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah. This valley is home to around 70% of the total population of Oregon today.
Huh.
70%.
Wow.
Because it includes 5 of the largest cities in the state: Portland, Eugene, Salem, Gresham, and Hillsborough. The Willamette River has several channels that jut off from the main river and kind of like spider out.
Mm-hmm.
So because of this, the rivers deposit highly fertile, I believe it's alluvial.
Sure.
Yeah, which is a mixture of clay, silt, and sand that is specifically deposited by running water. Like, so it has to be done that way. And it dispersed all of that onto Oregon's flat plains. This made the area prime real estate for those traveling to the west in search for land of agriculture.
Mm.
In fact, the valley was widely publicized in the 1820s as a, quote, promised land of milk and honey. The Willamette Valley was the premier destination in the 1800s for those who traveled along the Oregon Trail. Today, it is known a little less for being the land of milk and honey, and it has a new nickname.
Oh, dear.
You will like it.
Okay.
It is now known as Oregon Wine Country because you're not ready for this.
How many wineries?
It has more than 19,000 acres of vineyards and over 500 wineries.
Wow.
In that one area.
Wow.
Which makes sense because they said that the soil was really good for that. So it makes sense that there are vineyards all through it.
Right.
So, but yeah. At the age of 65, we're skipping right to 65.
Okay.
Nimrod O'Kelly traveled to Oregon on the Overland Trail in 1845 and staked a 1 square mile land claim in the heart of the Willamette Valley, which at this time was allowed by Oregon's provisional government. So this was the time where like the Great Land Rush, like you just run out and like, this is
Stake
mine.
your claim.
This is mine.
Yep.
Mine. Nobody else's.
Yes.
Mine. So he was doing
Seagull.
it. Mine.
Thank
This
you.
guy was. So in 1848, the U.S. government took possession of Oregon country and reduced the size of existing land claims to a half of a square mile for unmarried citizens. O'Kelly contended that he was married and he was entitled to a full square mile, right? He said that his family was in Missouri and would arrive in future migrations, like with the rest of everyone coming.
Right. He's like, I came out here to,
But
Get
by
some land.
1852, he still didn't have any family there. So like he was there for a good 8 years, 6, 8 years, and they still hadn't gotten there.
Something's rotten.
Well, we'll see. He allegedly had attempted to send letters back to his wife, but they didn't make it to her until several years later.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. This was common practice actually by single men at the time, and so that's what they kind of thought was going on. They would claim a double portion of the land, and then they went looking for a woman, like literally any woman,
Yeah. Like,
you'll
be a wife.
to marry so that they could keep this larger piece of land. Yeah. But O'Kelly was never looking for a wife since he claimed he already had one. Because of this, when more settlers were coming in, they were slowly encroaching on that land that O'Kelly had claimed. One of O'Kelly's neighbors, Jeremiah Mahoney, was confident that O'Kelly was trying to cheat the system, and Mahoney filed a competing claim on O'Kelly's 320 acres. and
Tried to take his land.
yeah, like part of it, and started living and working on the land because he had filed a claim to stake it and was like, this guy's not married, so he shouldn't have all this land. He doesn't have a family here, so I'm filing a claim.
I'm taking it into my own hands.
For part of it, like just part. He wasn't taking the whole thing. Well, tensions betwixt, if you will, the two Irishmen grew. So yes, they are Irish.
I thought maybe.
Yes. It didn't get any better over the next few months either. O'Kelly started carrying a shotgun everywhere he went.
Oh dear.
Finally, on May 21st of 1852, the feud escalated to physical violence, and O'Kelly shot and killed Mahoney. That evening, Mahoney's wife started to get worried when he didn't arrive back home. She went to the neighbors and asked if they would help her search for him. Of course, everyone started thinking of O'Kelly as the main suspect.
Well,
but the neighbors couldn't find O'Kelly.
Oh.
Because he was already on his way to turn himself in and make a statement about what happened.
Well, that's good.
According to the statement, Mahoney had approached O'Kelly and demanded to know why he always carried a gun. He announced his plan to take the gun away and beat him over the head with it, and then made a grab for it. O'Kelly claimed he didn't even remember cocking the gun and never actually meant to shoot, but the thing went off in his hands as the two men struggled over it. A warrant for murder was issued the same day, and a special court session convened about a month later. And this was the first murder trial ever held in the Oregon Territory.
Ooh.
The prosecution alleged that Nimrod O'Kelly, love it, was a land pirate who had fraudulently claimed extra land and that he had murdered Jeremiah Mahoney to prevent from losing it and to intimidate his other neighbors so that nobody else would challenge him either.
I mean, plausible.
There was no evidence. None. And it was all based on O'Kelly's story. But the jury unanimously found him guilty and sentenced him to be hanged.
And he went and turned himself in. I mean, I'm just saying, generally, if it really is an accident, you're like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, you're going to go say, hey, this is what happened.
Yeah. So we don't know.
I mean, I don't know the truth of the matter.
We don't.
I'm just saying, generally, if you're guilty.
I mean, if you're carrying around a gun.
He feared for his life. We don't know what the other guy had been saying to him.
We don't know. But he's murdered. So there's that.
And that is sad.
The hanging was scheduled for 4 weeks after the trial. So O'Kelly's attorney went to the state Supreme Court to try and appeal it. He cited 9 critical errors in the prosecution. Most of them were procedural, such as an inadequate notice, the wrong verbiage used in the charge documents, but several of them were big mistakes.
Huge.
Huge. Yes.
Thank you.
For instance, the county commissioners didn't select the jurors as they were supposed to, which suggests the jury may have been impaneled informally and deliberately packed with his angry neighbors, which would have been easy to come by, as O'Kelly was Catholic and most of the area was settled by outwardly anti-Catholic Protestants. Mahoney was an Irishman, but he was apparently very popular in the area, and the entire community seemed to have been convinced of O'Kelly's guilt. And like everybody liked Mahoney. Like everybody liked him. He was a good guy. Like everybody did. So yeah. Odds weren't really stacked in his favor.
Yeah.
So O'Kelly had to be sent to a neighboring county to await trial for fear of a lynch mob being formed and storming the Benton County Jail. Also, the court did not require the grand jurors to be sworn, nor did it examine them as to any of their qualifications. Finally, the verdict wasn't rendered in open court, nor in the presence of the defendant. Apparently, the jury just sent word to the judge that he was guilty and went home.
Hey, yo, we say guilty. We're going to the house.
Peace.
Deuces.
So the case went to the Supreme Court on appeal, and the Supremes handed down an astonishing verdict on the case. They acknowledged the errors, but affirmed the verdict anyway. They explained that given that O'Kelly was obviously guilty because his was the territory's first murder case, letting him off on even a very serious technicality would be poisoning the well of justice at its source. Chief Justice George H. Williams wrote, quote, "Time was when the unfortunate accused was dragged to trial without counsel or a fair chance for self-defense. Then other rules prevailed and courts tried to make technicalities the means of justice. But when a prisoner comes before our courts with more privileges and presumptions in his favor than he otherwise would have, these olden rules cease with the reasons on why they rested, and criminals cannot be allowed to take refuge from the judgment of our liberal laws in the cobwebs of an antiquated practice."
There you go.
Williams added that the executive clemency was the only appropriate way to address procedural errors in a case where a defendant's guilt was stark and obvious, by adding, quote, "If judicial compassion now bends the law to suit a seemingly hard case, a door may be opened through which the midnight assassin and mercenary murderer may escape from the punishment due to their crimes." Basically, like, okay, yeah, all this is great. All these were errors, but like the guy was clearly guilty,
and we're not setting a precedent.
Doesn't matter anyways.
And we're not going to set a precedent that future people can use to say, but look at this case. Yeah.
By the time the Supreme Court had gotten to the case, it was in 1854, 2 years after the murder conviction. During this time, pleas had come in from all over the state and the territory's governing office, arguing both for and against a pardon for O'Kelly. It seems that O'Kelly's allegedly imaginary wife, Sarah O'Kelly, left Missouri on the Oregon Trail in the spring of 1854 to join her husband. Word reached them en route that O'Kelly was about to be hanged for murder, so their oldest son took a horse and raced ahead of the wagon train. He beat the clock, appearing to the Benton County Sheriff's Office, and introduced himself to Sheriff T.J. Wright, letting the lawman know that the rest of the family was on the way. This changed everything.
Oh, you do have a family, like you said.
O'Kelly went from a pirate trying to unlawfully seize another man's land by force of arms to a legitimate landowner defending himself and his property. Sheriff Wright opened the cell and set O'Kelly free. Although he had no authority to do such a thing, he was confident that the law would catch up and everything would be right.
Uh-oh.
O'Kelly went to the gallows 3 times. The first execution was postponed by Governor John Pollard Gaines. The second was stayed by the Oregon Territory Supreme Court. And the third was canceled by Governor John Wesley Davis, who commuted the sentence to 2 years imprisonment.
That he already served.
The 74-year-old O'Kelly, without guard, voluntarily reported to the Oregon Territorial Penitentiary in Portland. So they did not let his 2 years in there be his time served. Governor George Law Curry pardoned O'Kelly in March of 1856, finding his land claim still unsettled. O'Kelly traveled on foot and horseback along the Oregon Trail and then by train to the U.S. General Land Office in Washington, D.C. Finding no success there, he returned to Oregon in 1859. He was 65 when he first staked his claim, 72 when he killed a man, 74 when he was imprisoned, 76 when he went back across the continent, and 79 when he made his third trek on the Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
O'Kelly died in 1864. His claim still unsettled.
Oh.
Not until 1881 did the federal government transfer posthumously the full square mile of public land to the private ownership of O'Kelly and his wife, Sarah.
Wow.
And that's the first murder seen by the Ohio Supreme Court. Nimrod.
Wow. And I mean,
it's such a weird, like,
could the courts not get in touch with the wife and the family?
Like, I guess
didn't we have telegraph?
I don't know.
Do we have telegraph then?
Yes, but it had not been
Maybe not that
established
out
there. Yeah. Like we just talked about it in a few previous episodes that it was New York.
Okay.
Like it had just been done.
Made it all the way
out. It hadn't made it there. So,
but I mean, still, like if it's a murder case, the first murder case, and you want to be thorough, you don't want to set an unfair precedent that somebody might could use. Maybe you try to see if there really is a family.
Maybe.
Just my thought.
It's just so crazy how like he turns into, the whole town looks at him as a cold-blooded killer. And then all of a sudden his wife shows up and they're like, oh, he was protecting his land. It's like, no, but she still killed someone.
He only had a wife.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay. Thanks.
But I mean, I will say from the story that he gave, that his account, of course, his story. But why would you run and turn yourself in for something like that if you really thought that you were going to really, really get like majorly punished for it? You were like, hey, dude came on my land.
Yeah.
I'm elderly. I keep a gun with me because I can't fist fight anymore. I'm getting a little seasoned. He came up on my land, told me how he was gonna take care of me. So I defended myself, and what happened was he ended up getting shot.
Which I think now, a lot of states do have that where you can defend like your own property, and it's called castle doctrine is one of them. And then in some states it's called, I know Texas is called, actually Texas might be where it's castle doctrine, but, or they call it stand your ground laws. So, I'm not sure, but like what a name to have, like Nimrod O'Kelly. And your name is now synonymous with like the first murder case in Oregon. It's like, oh, his name was what?
That's when you won't forget.
No, never. Not at all. Interesting. So, yes, found it an interesting case. I know this week's episode is not as long as some of our others, but we got to talk about Calamity Jane.
We did.
So, which was interesting.
And I knew a little bit about her when she said who she was. Like
I didn't know about her being 14 and like just basically taking all the kids and being like, all right, this is me now. Like, I'm now the sole provider for all these kids.
But that happened so much back then. It fell to the older,
which is crazy to think about. But that young, like so young, is just insane to me. But
that's how it went.
Everybody was dying of dysentery on the Oregon Trail.
Well,
we already know that.
They had more responsibility at younger ages then as well.
Yeah.
So, at 14, she was her mama's right-hand woman.
Well, her mom died when she was 12.
Oh, that's right.
Her dad died when she was 14.
So, it was already put on her at 12. That's right. So,
just very interesting. Well, You can find any and all information about ONUC on our website. It's onenationundercrime.com. We are One Nation Under Crime pretty much anywhere you want to find us. Go find us. Go while you're at it. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. 5 stars only.
Happy.
5 stars only. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. We've discussed this. And that's about it. If you want to become a Patreon fan, you can as well. That is going to be patreon.com/onenationundercrime. We would greatly appreciate it. But if not, you can always do the free thing and go give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast. We would love you forever.
Yes. We would.
We would. I mean, we do, but yes. Thank you guys for listening to this week's episode.
Thank you.
Of One Nation Under Crime. We will see you here same time.
Different crime.
Next week. And remember, there isn't always liberty and justice for all.
Unfortunately.
I guess unless your name is Nimrod in that case.
And telling the truth doesn't always work if people don't believe you.
Goodbye.
Bye.